The mansion gleamed under the sun like a monument to power. Polished marble stairs stretched upward, chandeliers glittered through tall windows, and cars worth more than most people's houses sat idling in the circular driveway. Inside, servants rushed about preparing for the Harrington family's weekend luncheon, a spectacle designed to remind guests that the Harringtons didn't just live in luxury, they defined it. Among the staff was a quiet figure most guests would never notice. Daniel, the cleaner's son. He was only 16, wiry, with hands rougher than his years should allow. His mother, Gloria, had worked for the Harringtons for over a decade, cleaning their floors, polishing their silver, and raising their children as if they were her own. Daniel often helped her on weekends, slipping silently through the hallways with buckets and rags, invisible to the world that mocked his poverty. But not everyone ignored him. That afternoon, while the house buzzed with preparations, Lady Harrington descended the grand staircase in a dress of shimmering silk, her diamond earrings catching the light like fire. Her lips curled when she spotted Daniel wiping down the banister. "What is this boy doing here?" she said loudly enough for servants nearby to hear. "Isn't he supposed to be scrubbing floors, not polluting my staircase with his filthy hands?" Daniel froze, the rag tightening in his grip. His mother glanced up from the dining table where she was setting cutlery, her cheeks flushing. "Ma'am, he's just helping me." "Helping?" Lady Harrington's voice sliced the air. "Helping himself to the view, more like. Look at him, standing there as if he belongs in my house. He's nothing but a cleaner's son. He should be grateful we even let him breathe the same air." A couple of guests who had arrived early chuckled, sipping their champagne as if her cruelty were entertainment. Daniel lowered his head, but inside, a storm brewed. His mother reached for his arm, whispering, "Don't respond, Daniel. Please." But Lady Harrington wasn't finished. She walked closer, heels clicking on marble like daggers. "Do you know what separates boys like my son from boys like you? Blood. Breed. Class. My Victor was born to rule this city, while you—" She looked him up and down, eyes dripping with disdain. "You'll spend your life scrubbing the dirt off men's shoes. You'll never be more than this." The room grew quiet, servants avoiding her gaze, guests smirking as if this humiliation were tradition. Daniel clenched his fists, so tight his knuckles went white. He wanted to shout, to fight, to tell her that her diamonds sparkled only because his mother polished them, that her empire stood only because people like Gloria sacrificed their lives to hold it up. But before he could speak, a deep voice echoed from the hallway. "Is that so?" Every head turned. Standing in the doorway was Marcus Harrington, the millionaire patriarch himself. Tall, broad-shouldered, with an aura that silenced rooms without effort, Marcus rarely involved himself in petty matters of the household. But today, his eyes burned with an intensity that sent a ripple of unease across the room. Lady Harrington's lips parted in surprise. "Darling," she said quickly, "I was merely—" "I heard every word," Marcus interrupted, his tone sharp as steel. He stepped forward, his gaze fixed on his wife. "Tell me, Eleanor, what exactly makes you believe this boy is beneath us?" Eleanor stammered. "He's the cleaner's son. Look at him. He doesn't belong here, standing on these stairs as if he's our equal." Marcus studied Daniel, whose chest rose and fell with silent fury. Then he turned back to his wife, his jaw tightening. "Perhaps it is you," he said coldly, "who doesn't belong." The words dropped like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled across the hall. Eleanor's eyes widened, a flash of fear breaking through her arrogance. Daniel blinked. Had he heard right? The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Marcus didn't look away. For the first time, Eleanor's diamond crown seemed to crack. And then Marcus said something that sent shockwaves through the entire household. "This boy will dine with us today." The guests gasped. Servants froze. Eleanor nearly dropped her glass. Daniel's mother covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. "Sir, please," she whispered. "That isn't necessary." Marcus raised a hand. "It is. If this family cannot treat the people under this roof with respect, then we are nothing. Daniel will sit at my table as my guest." Eleanor's face drained of color. Her lips trembled, but no words came. The guests shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to applaud or stay silent. Daniel, stunned, stared at the man who had just overturned the hierarchy of his world with a single sentence. But inside Eleanor's mind, something dark was stirring. Her humiliation burned hotter than fire, and her pride, razor-sharp and vengeful, was already plotting how to strike back. The luncheon began, tension thick as smoke. Daniel sat at the end of the polished oak table, eyes wide at the silver cutlery and crystal glasses, while Eleanor's hands clenched around her wine stem. Every smile she offered her guests was brittle, her gaze flicking back to Daniel like daggers. Victor, her son, leaned toward her and whispered, "Mother, what is father doing? This is madness." "Silence," she hissed. "Let me handle this." But she wasn't prepared for what Marcus would do next. He tapped his glass, drawing the room's attention. "Today," he announced, "we honor not only our wealth but the dignity of every soul under this roof. Too long have we mistaken fortune for superiority. Today that ends." Murmurs spread. Guests exchanged looks. Some servants lowered their heads, hiding tears. Eleanor forced a smile. "Of course, darling. How noble." But inside, her rage grew sharper. As the meal went on, she watched Daniel carefully, searching for weakness. And when she finally found her chance, she struck. Leaning forward, she said sweetly, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Daniel, darling, why don't you tell us? What does your father do?" The question was a blade. Daniel stiffened. His father had abandoned him and his mother years ago, leaving them with nothing. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The room buzzed with anticipation. "Or perhaps," Eleanor continued, her tone dripping venom, "you don't know who your father is?" The laughter that followed was cruel and sharp. Daniel's face flushed red, his hands trembling. His mother whispered his name, but he couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Marcus slammed his fist onto the table. The crystal glasses rattled. The laughter died instantly. "Enough!" Marcus roared, his eyes blazing. He glared at Eleanor with a fury no one had ever seen. "You shame yourself, not him." But Eleanor only smiled faintly, a smile that promised this battle was far from over. Because in her mind, Daniel's humiliation had only just begun. The storm had been unleashed, and no one, not even Marcus, could see how far Eleanor would go to protect her pride. Eleanor slips away after the luncheon, whispering to Victor, "If your father wants to treat that boy like family, then let's show him what family does to intruders." This is just the beginning. The humiliation, the secrets, and the revenge Eleanor is about to unleash will tear the Harringtons apart. If you want to see how far this war will go, and the shocking truth Marcus will discover, stay with me. And before we dive deeper, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and tell me in the comments, if you were Daniel, would you have spoken up at the table, or stayed silent? The mansion that night was a battlefield disguised in silence. After the luncheon, the guests had gone home whispering among themselves. Servants scurried nervously, as if afraid of unseen shadows, and Marcus Harrington locked himself in his study, pacing by the fireplace. His glass of whiskey trembled in his hand, not from drink, but from the storm he could feel gathering inside his own house. Upstairs, Eleanor Harrington stood before a mirror, peeling off her diamond earrings with jerky movements. Her reflection sneered back at her, a woman who had been publicly humiliated in her own home, not by strangers, but by her own husband. Worse than that, she had been defied for the sake of a boy she considered dirt beneath her shoes. "Daniel," she muttered, spitting the name like poison. Her nails dug into her palm. "That boy will regret the day he ever set foot in my house." Victor entered, his face tight with worry. "Mother, what's father thinking? Bringing him to our table? Praising him in front of everyone? It makes us look weak. People will talk." "They're already talking," Eleanor snapped, turning sharply. "But let them. They'll see soon enough who truly rules this family. If Marcus wants to challenge me with a cleaner's son, then Marcus will suffer the consequences." Victor frowned. "What are you planning?" Eleanor's eyes glistened with a cold fire. The kind of lesson no one forgets. Meanwhile, downstairs, Daniel sat with his mother in the small servants' quarters. He hadn't spoken much since the luncheon. His mother tried to comfort him, stroking his hair like she had when he was a boy, but he pulled away gently. "Mom," he whispered, "why do people like her hate us so much? What did we ever do to them?" Gloria's eyes filled with tears. "It's not about you, Daniel. It's about their fear. People like Eleanor live their whole lives terrified that one day the world will realize they aren't special, that their riches mean nothing. So they crush anyone who reminds them of it." Daniel clenched his fists. "I don't want to be crushed. I want to fight." "Don't," she begged softly. "Please, promise me you won't. We can't win against people like them." But Daniel didn't promise. Deep inside, something had awakened. He wasn't just going to endure humiliation anymore. The next morning, the Harrington mansion glittered with its usual grandeur, but under the polished surface, cracks widened. Marcus summoned Eleanor to his study. She entered in silence, her chin high, her smile brittle. "We need to talk," Marcus said firmly. Eleanor crossed her arms. "About what?" About your little stunt yesterday? About your cruelty, Marcus shot back. Eleanor, that boy has done nothing to you. He's a child. And yet you humiliate him in front of our guests, mock his family, mock his very existence. Tell me, does it make you feel powerful to crush a boy's spirit? Eleanor's lips curled. It makes me feel honest. He doesn't belong here, Marcus. And the more you pretend he does, the more you humiliate me. Marcus's voice rose. Humiliate you? You humiliated yourself. Do you think people respect a woman who sneers at servants? They pity you, Eleanor. They see the emptiness inside you. Her face darkened. Careful, she hissed. I am your wife. And you are destroying this family, Marcus said coldly. For a long moment, they glared at each other, fire meeting ice. Finally, Eleanor smiled faintly. If you want to bring a cleaner's son into this family, then fine. Let's see how long he survives it. She turned and left, her heels echoing like war drums down the hall. Over the next few days, Daniel felt the weight of her words. Wherever he went, Victor and his friends seemed to be waiting. At the stables, by the pool, even outside the servants' quarters. Their taunts grew sharper, their games crueler. Hey, cleaner's boy, Victor sneered one afternoon, blocking Daniel's path with a smug grin. Enjoy sitting at my father's table? Don't get used to it. You'll be back to polishing shoes before the week is over. Daniel ignored him, but Victor shoved him hard against the wall. His friends laughed. Daniel's chest heaved with anger, but he held it in, his mother's voice echoing in his head. Don't fight. We can't win against people like them. But inside, his silence was no longer submission. It was fuel. Marcus noticed the bruises on Daniel's arm that evening. What happened? He asked quietly. Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. Nothing. Marcus studied him. A man who stays silent in the face of injustice only feeds the injustice. Daniel looked up. So what do I do? Be patient, Marcus said softly. The truth always reveals itself, even if it destroys everything. That night, Eleanor planned her next move. She sat in her room with a glass of wine, Victor by her side, whispering strategies. Then, with a wicked smile, she said, Tomorrow, we show Marcus what happens when he chooses the son of a cleaner over his own blood. The next day dawned bright and deceptive. A garden party filled the Harrington estate with wealthy guests, laughter, and clinking glasses. Eleanor floated among them like a queen, her smile hiding the venom beneath. At the center of the garden, Marcus raised a toast. To family, he said firmly, his eyes locking on Eleanor's. Not by blood, not by wealth, but by honor. Applause followed, but Eleanor's smirk didn't fade. She clapped politely, then leaned toward Victor. Now, she whispered. Victor nodded, signaling to one of his friends. Within minutes, whispers spread among the guests like wildfire. Heads turned, fingers pointed, and then the laughter began. Daniel, standing near his mother, felt the weight of every gaze. Confused, he looked around, until he saw it. On a large projection screen, images flickered to life. Photos of Daniel, dirty, exhausted, sleeping in alleyways from years ago, when he and his mother had been homeless, flashed before the wealthy crowd. His darkest, most vulnerable moments, displayed like a circus show. Gasps turned into cruel chuckles. Guests covered their mouths, whispering. Eleanor's voice rang out sweetly. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the boy my husband has chosen to bring into our family. A homeless rat, dressed up as a guest of honor. The laughter roared louder. Gloria grabbed her son's hand, her face pale with shame. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, humiliation burning his skin. But then, something inside him snapped. Instead of running, instead of crying, he stood tall. He looked at every guest in the eye, his voice trembling but strong. Yes, he shouted over the laughter. That was me. I slept in alleys. I starved. I wore the same torn clothes for weeks. But I survived. Do you hear me? I survived. While you all sit here hiding behind your money, I know what it's like to fight for every breath. And that makes me stronger than any of you. The garden fell silent. The guests stopped laughing. Even Eleanor's smirk faltered. Marcus's chest swelled with pride. He raised his glass again. To Daniel, the strongest man in this garden today. Applause erupted, some hesitant, some genuine. But in the corner, Eleanor's eyes narrowed to slits. She wasn't finished, not yet. She leaned close to Victor, her voice like ice. If Marcus wants to protect that boy, then we'll give him something even he can't defend. Tomorrow, we end this once and for all. And in that moment, the war between husband and wife, between pride and justice, between cruelty and survival, reached its most dangerous point. Eleanor places a sealed envelope into Victor's hand and whispers, "Tomorrow, you'll expose the secret that will ruin them both forever." Eleanor's schemes are only getting darker, and the secret she's about to unleash will shatter not only Daniel's world, but Marcus's as well. What do you think is in that envelope? Something from Daniel's past, or something Eleanor has been hiding all along? Comment your theory below, smash that like button, and subscribe so you don't miss next. Trust me, the twist is going to leave you speechless. The Harrington estate woke the next morning heavy with unease. Staff whispered in corridors, glancing nervously at closed doors. Marcus had not spoken to Eleanor since the garden party. Daniel, though brave before the guests, spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every cruel laugh. His mother, Gloria, sat beside him, humming old hymns under her breath, trying to soothe the wounds that no bandage could cover. But in Eleanor's wing of the mansion, silence was not defeat, it was strategy. She and Victor sat at the breakfast table, their eyes gleaming over untouched plates. Between them lay the sealed envelope she had prepared the night before. "This," she said softly, sliding it toward him, "will destroy Marcus's little charity project." Victor lifted it carefully, like it was made of fire. "Are you sure?" "Of course," Eleanor whispered, her lips curling. "One whisper of what's inside, and not even Marcus will be able to look at that boy without shame." Victor hesitated. "And if it backfires?" Eleanor's hand snapped out, gripping his wrist like iron. "Then we double down. Understand me? This is about power. If Marcus thinks he can challenge me, if he thinks he can drag a cleaner's son into our family, then I'll remind him, and everyone else, exactly who runs this house." Victor nodded, but unease flickered in his eyes. Downstairs, Marcus called Daniel into his study. The boy walked in stiffly, his chin up, but his eyes still bruised from the humiliation. "Sit," Marcus said gently. Daniel obeyed, perching on the edge of the chair. "You did something yesterday I'll never forget," Marcus said. "You stood up to them. That takes courage most men never find." Daniel looked down. It didn't feel like courage. It just felt like, if I didn't speak, I'd disappear. Marcus leaned forward. "Sometimes, that's exactly what courage is. Speaking when silence would be easier." Daniel met his eyes. "Do you really believe I belong here? Or are you just saying that because you hate Eleanor?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I believe you have more honor in you than half the people who've ever walked these halls. But whether you belong here, that's a question only you can answer. Not me. Not Eleanor. You." Daniel swallowed hard, his fists tightening. "Then I'll prove it." That afternoon, the Harringtons hosted a board meeting in the Grand Hall. Investors, partners, and media representatives filled the room. Cameras flashed. The event was meant to showcase Marcus's empire, but Eleanor had other plans. As Marcus addressed the board, Eleanor slipped quietly to the side of the stage. Victor followed, his face pale. She pressed the envelope into his hand and whispered, "Now." Victor hesitated. "Mother, Now," she hissed. Reluctantly, he stepped forward. "Excuse me," he called, his voice carrying across the hall. The room fell silent. Marcus frowned. Eleanor's smile widened. Victor held up the envelope. "Before we proceed, I think everyone deserves to know the truth about the boy my father has suddenly brought into our lives." A ripple of whispers spread. Marcus's jaw tightened. Victor opened the envelope with trembling fingers and pulled out a stack of papers. He hesitated again, glancing at Eleanor, but she nodded sharply. "This," Victor said, his voice shaking but growing stronger, "is Daniel's past. The boy you've all seen at our table. The boy father claims to admire. What he hasn't told you is that Daniel isn't just the son of a cleaner. He stopped, staring at the words. His face drained of color. "What is it?" someone called. Victor's hands shook as he read. His voice cracked. He's not who we thought. Daniel isn't Gloria's only child. He was adopted. His real father," Victor swallowed, his throat tight. "His real father is—" The room leaned in. Eleanor's eyes gleamed with triumph. Marcus stiffened, dread crawling up his spine. "His real father," Victor forced out, "is Marcus Harrington." Gasps exploded through the hall. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed wildly. Marcus staggered back as if struck. Daniel froze, his chest tightening like a vice. Gloria covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. And Eleanor? Eleanor's smile shattered. "No," she whispered. "That's impossible." She snatched the papers from Victor's hand and scanned them, her face draining of color. DNA results. Paternity confirmation. Marcus's name, printed in bold. The silence that followed was suffocating. All eyes turned to Marcus. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Eleanor's voice broke the silence, trembling with fury. You had a child with her? She pointed at Gloria, her hand shaking. With the cleaner? You brought your bastard into my house. Gloria's tears spilled down her cheeks. Daniel stood frozen, his world crumbling. Marcus finally found his voice. It was years ago. Before you and I, before everything. I didn't know. Gloria never told me. Gloria's sob cut through the chaos. I wanted to. But you were so far above me, Marcus. I thought he'd have a better life if I stayed silent. But then I saw what Eleanor was doing to him. I couldn't let him suffer anymore. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Guests whispered in shock. Eleanor's face twisted with rage. You've ruined me, she hissed at Marcus. Do you hear me? Ruined me. Marcus turned to Daniel, his eyes soft, pained. Daniel, I'm your father. Daniel's knees buckled. His world spun. The boy who had always felt invisible, humiliated, crushed, was suddenly at the center of a storm that could destroy everything. But before he could speak, Eleanor lunged forward, her voice shrieking over the crowd. You think this changes anything? He'll never be one of us. He's filth, Marcus. Filth. And I will burn this family to the ground before I let him take my place. Security rushed forward as the room descended into chaos. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Eleanor was dragged back, screaming Marcus's name like a curse. Daniel stood there, trembling, his heart shattering under the weight of a truth he never asked for. The boy who had been mocked as a cleaner's son was, in fact, heir to everything. But at what cost? And in that moment, a new war began, not just between Eleanor and Marcus, but inside Daniel himself. Could he accept a man who had unknowingly abandoned him? Could he ever forgive Gloria for her silence? Or would he rise and claim the Harrington legacy, even if it destroyed everyone in his path? Daniel, staring at his father in shock, whispers, If you're my father, then who am I? The cameras flash. The world waits. Daniel's entire life has been flipped upside down in front of the world. The cleaner's son is now revealed as the heir to the Harrington empire. But will he embrace it, or reject it? And how far will Eleanor go to destroy him now? Comment your thoughts. Hit that like button if this twist shocked you. And don't forget to subscribe, because next will change everything. The days after the boardroom explosion were unlike anything the Harringtons had ever faced. Newspapers screamed the headline. Cleaner's son revealed as Harrington heir. Television anchors dissected the scandal for hours. Social media overflowed with outrage, curiosity, and judgment. But inside the Harrington mansion, silence reigned. Eleanor had locked herself away, refusing food, refusing sleep, her once pristine image crumbling with every headline. Victor wandered the halls like a ghost, unsure whether he was still the golden heir or just a shadow cast aside. And Marcus? He spent his hours outside Daniel's door, knocking softly, waiting for the boy to answer. But Daniel didn't. Not once. Gloria was the only one who could reach him. She would slip into his room, sit on the edge of his bed, and stroke his hair the way she did when he was a child. But even then, Daniel lay silent, his eyes dark, staring at the ceiling as though searching for something just out of reach. Finally, on the fourth day, Marcus pushed open the door. Daniel didn't look at him. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, Marcus said quietly. I should have been there. I should have known. Daniel's voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. Do you even know what it's like? To be laughed at? To be treated like dirt in your own house? By your own stepmother? Marcus closed his eyes. I know I failed you. Daniel turned his head slowly, meeting his father's gaze for the first time since the truth broke. His voice trembled, but it was sharp, steady. Then prove to me you won't fail me again. Marcus swallowed hard. How? Daniel sat up. By letting me speak. And so it was decided. The Harringtons announced a press conference. The world would hear Daniel's story, not filtered through gossip or headlines, but in his own words. The night of the conference, cameras filled the Harrington estate once again. Guests whispered. Reporters scribbled. The air was electric with anticipation. Eleanor appeared at the top of the grand staircase, her makeup heavy enough to hide her sleepless nights, her smile brittle but sharp. This is a mistake, she hissed at Marcus. You're going to hand him the knife that cuts this family apart. Marcus didn't reply. He took Daniel's shoulder gently, guiding him toward the podium. Gloria followed close, her hands trembling, but her eyes fierce with pride. Daniel stepped up. The flashbulbs nearly blinded him. For a moment, his throat locked. The memory of Victor's laughter, Eleanor's sneer, the cruel eyes of guests, every humiliation surged back. But then he remembered Marcus's words. Sometimes, courage is speaking when silence would be easier. He took a deep breath. "My name is Daniel," he said, his voice steady. "For years, I was mocked as the cleaner's son. I was laughed at, belittled, made to feel like I didn't belong. But I stayed silent, because I thought silence would protect me. It didn't." The room shifted. Even the reporters lowered their pens for a moment, listening. Daniel continued. "Now, the world knows the truth. I am Marcus Harrington's son. But that doesn't erase the years of pain. It doesn't erase the cruelty. And it doesn't erase the truth about families like mine. The ones who serve, who clean, who build lives in the shadows of those who think they're better. Families like mine deserve respect." Whispers surged through the crowd. Eleanor's smile faltered. Marcus's eyes glistened with pride. Daniel took a deep breath. "So I'll say this, not just to this family, but to everyone listening. I will not be silent anymore. And I will not let anyone, not even the Harrington name, tell me what I'm worth." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then swelling into thunder. But the moment shattered when Eleanor stepped forward. Her voice cut through the clapping like a blade. "Do you hear yourselves?" she spat. "This boy thinks he's your savior. He's nothing. He's filth. And Marcus," she turned, pointing a shaking finger at her husband, "you're a traitor to everything this family stands for." Security stepped forward, but Eleanor shoved past them, lunging toward Daniel. "You'll never be one of us. I'll destroy you before I let you take my place." Marcus caught her wrists, holding her back. "Enough, Eleanor." She thrashed against him, her eyes wild, her voice shrieking. "I built this family. I carried its name. You think you can replace me with a cleaner's son? Never. Never." The cameras clicked furiously. Reporters shouted. The image of Eleanor unraveling in front of the world would be tomorrow's headline. Finally, she collapsed, screaming Marcus's name, dragged out by security as her voice echoed through the hall. The room fell silent again. Daniel looked at Marcus, his chest heaving. "This is the family I belong to?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "No, son. This is the family we will rebuild together." Gloria stepped forward, wrapping her arms around Daniel. For the first time in years, he didn't resist. He let himself be held. The applause rose again, louder, stronger, drowning out the memory of Eleanor's screams. The next morning, headlines painted a new story. Cleaner's son reclaims his voice. The heir who changed the Harrington legacy. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt seen. Not as the cleaner's boy. Not even as Marcus's son. But as himself. And deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Eleanor was not gone. Behind the closed doors of a luxury hotel, she sat with a glass of wine, her eyes burning with hatred. She dialed a number. "It's time," she whispered. "If Marcus thinks he can humiliate me in front of the world, he has no idea what's coming. Daniel won't inherit anything. I'll make sure of it." The voice on the other end replied coldly. "Understood." Eleanor's smile returned, sharp as a blade. The war was not over. If that ending shook you, then buckle up, because Eleanor is far from finished. Do you think Daniel has what it takes to protect the legacy he never asked for? Or will Eleanor's revenge tear everything apart? Let me know in the comments below. Smash that like button if this twist hit you hard, and don't forget to subscribe, because the next story will be even more explosive.